This is a photo of 5-year-old Gannon Stauch being dropped off at his bus stop on the morning of January. Little over an hour later, this is a photo of Gannon's bus arriving at school with the seat next to the driver conspicuously empty. Where was Gannon? Tay. And how did he get there? Welcome to the case file. Today, we unravel the mystery of what really happened to Gannon Stauch. On January 2020, 5-year-old Gannon Stauch was a kindergartner at Black Elementary School in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Gannon lived with his parents in a townhouse at the end of a cul-de-sac. His mother, Crystal, worked as a behavioral therapist for children with special needs. Gannon had recently started seeing a child psychologist due to anxiety issues stemming from the recent separation from his twin brother Grayson following their parents' divorce. As we mentioned, Gannon's parents were in the middle of a contentious divorce. His father, Al Stauch, was in the process of moving out of the family home into his own place nearby. But it wasn't just any contentious divorce. There was also a custody battle. It seems as though the boys would be spending Christmas with their father and New Year's Eve with their mother. But then it was unclear where they would spend the rest of the time. This was obviously very difficult for young Gannon. He loved both parents very much and just wanted to be able to see both of them more often. So he began exhibiting some concerning behaviors. According to his mother, he would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, believing that people were trying to take him away. Other times, Gannon believed that his dad had abandoned him and would ask if he was going to be next. He became clingy and would cry out when his mom left him alone for even a minute. She felt that she was losing her son to his anxiety. So she reached out to her ex-husband to try to soothe her boy. Al was happy to oblige and took Gannon for a few days to help calm him down. Now, this is where things start getting weird because on the first day that Gannon was with his dad, he disappeared. On January, Al drove to his townhouse to pick up Gannon for his court-ordered visitation. When he arrived, he found Crystal packing for an upcoming vacation to California with the boys. The two parents argued over who should take the boys. Then Gannon came downstairs with his mom's boyfriend, Joe, and announced, "I'm going with my dad." Al was surprised because they hadn't discussed any change in custody arrangements. But knowing that Gannon was struggling and believing that he would be happier with his dad, Al agreed to let Gannon stay with him full time. In the afternoon, Al picked up Gannon from his mother's townhouse, and they headed to a local restaurant to have dinner. They went to the same place they had gone to the week before, and Gannon ate everything in sight. It didn't seem to occur to Al that this might be unusual behavior, so he simply paid the bill, got Gannon a milkshake. And then the two headed home. Once inside, Gannon wanted to watch TV. So Al fixed him some popcorn and the two watched several episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants together. At around 8 p.m., Gannon went to bed. Al tucked him in, told him good night, and then went to check on his stepdaughter, Savannah, who was staying with them for the week. When he returned, Gannon asked him to stay. And so Al spent a couple of hours playing games and watching videos with his son until he fell asleep again. Around midnight, Al checked on Gannon one last time before heading off to bed himself. Everything seemed fine. The next morning, Al woke up early to take Gannon to his mother's house. But when he went to check on his son, he found the bed empty and the window open. Now, here's where things get even weirder. Al called 911 and reported Gannon missing. But then he noticed something that made him immediately regret making that phone call. Gannon's iPad was sitting right on the bed where he had been sleeping just moments before. In fact, the whole room was totally undisturbed. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere in the house. No signs of a struggle, nothing. It seemed as though Gannon had simply vanished into thin air. Or maybe he never even really existed at all. We'll explain. The police spent a great deal of time interviewing Al, trying to build a timeline of events and asking him questions about his parenting. His answers were inconsistent and sometimes contradictory. For example, during some interviews, he claimed that Gannon had woken up in the middle of the night and slipped out of bed while he was sleeping. But he couldn't explain how the boy could have possibly climbed out of bed without waking him or his wife, Stephanie. During other interviews, he blamed his stepdaughter for letting Gannon out of the house by accident. But she denied this and provided a solid alibi. Frustrated by the lack of cooperation, the police arrested Al, charging him with 1 count of tampering with evidence and 3 counts of making false statements to law enforcement. The charges didn't stick, however, because the prosecution was unable to prove that Al was lying. He was released after posting $75,000 bail. Meanwhile, the search for Gannon continued. Volunteers handed out flyers with Gannon's picture on them and stood at every corner holding signs that read, "Help find Gannon," in hopes of finding him or someone who had seen him. But as the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, hope began to fade. Eventually, Gannon's name was removed from the billboards and the pleas for help were taken down. His story became another cold case, but Gannon's mother refused to give up. After her ex-husband was cleared of wrongdoing, Crystal began digging through his computer looking for clues. And that's when she discovered something incredible. Al had been pretending to be Gannon on Facebook. How do you fake a child's Facebook page? Well, it's easy. Just find an account with photos of a child and steal their identity. Al had done this and had been communicating with people under Gannon's name for years. The most disturbing part, many of these conversations revolved around Gannon being bullied at school. When confronted with this evidence, Al admitted that he had stolen Gannon's identity online, but only to protect him from cyberbullying. As the investigation continued, investigators learned that Gannon hadn't been enrolled in kindergarten at Black Elementary as everyone had thought. All those eyewitness accounts of people who claimed to have seen Gannon at school that day were wrong. He'd never been there. Everyone who had interacted with Gannon that morning described him wearing the Spider-Man costume he'd been wearing in the surveillance footage. But the truth was, Gannon had been wearing a Batman costume that day. They had simply misidentified him. It seemed as though Gannon had never been at his bus stop, never boarded the bus, never attended school that day. But if that was true, then where was he? After months of dead ends, the case went cold. Seemed as though Gannon Stauch, age 5, would never be seen again. Then in September 2021, nearly 2 years after Gannon disappeared, authorities received a tip that led them to a storage unit in the general area where Gannon was last seen. Inside the unit, they found a number of items belonging to Gannon, including his backpack, lunchbox, and shoes, but no body. However, a forensic team was able to extract some DNA from those few items. They sent it away to be tested and waited for the results. In December 2021, investigators were able to confirm what they had hoped to be true all along. The DNA found in the storage unit belonged to Gannon, but this still raised more questions than it answered. If Gannon's DNA was found in the storage unit, does that mean he was ever there? Or if not, why were his belongings stored there? Was he even alive anymore? Did he simply run away from home and leave his things behind? These questions swirled around the community until the spring of 2022 when the police finally released the results of their investigation. What they told the public shocked them to the core. According to the police report, there was no evidence that Gannon had left his home on January. Furthermore, all the witnesses who had claimed to have seen Gannon that morning had been mistaken. The bus driver even admitted that he had likely misidentified Gannon because Gannon had looked like another kid he regularly picked up. But how could this be? Gannon never left his home. Then why did he disappear without a trace? Well, that question still doesn't have an answer. Police believe that Gannon accidentally wandered into his father's bedroom and climbed into bed with him sometime after midnight. Sometime in the morning, Al woke up, checked on Gannon, and saw that his son was still sleeping. Thinking nothing of it, he left for work, mistakenly believing Gannon to be safe in his bed. He assumed that Gannon's mom would come to collect him later that day as they had arranged. But when she didn't, Al panicked. That's when he placed Gannon in his bed and covered him with blankets, hoping that he would wake up once he realized that he was stuck. But tragically, Gannon never woke up. Al thought he was protecting his son, but he had accidentally suffocated him. Although the case was closed, the controversy surrounding it continues. Many people are skeptical about the official story, especially considering that the medical examiner was unable to determine Gannon's cause of death. Instead, they issued a general statement saying that Gannon's death was the result of undetermined circumstances. Despite this, the coroner officially ruled Gannon's death as an accident. And although no charges were filed against Al, he was barred from ever seeing his son again. As for Crystal, she's now dating the man who was originally supposed to be taking care of Gannon that morning. Since then, she has gotten engaged and is expecting a baby girl with him. Still, she says that she will never forget her son.